I'm hoping you're here voluntarily, otherwise to digest the lunch and stay awake is going to be a real challenge. Can I ask you that if you're starting to feel lethargic, so if the lunch is getting to you and you feel your concentration is dropping off, do what you need to do to cope. So if that means either take a cat nap at your table, please do so, it's not going to upset me. If it means you want to go sit in the back just to take a breather, please do so. If you want to stand up and move around the room, it will not upset my stride at all. So please do whatever you need to do to keep your energy levels high. So, why do we prioritize?
We can't do everything.
I didn't expect someone to hit a home run on the first one. I wanted at least a couple of answers. So, because we can't do everything. You simply cannot do it all. So, you better make sure that the stuff you do are different. Why is it so hard?
Competing interests.
So
Everybody wants it done all at the same time.
yes, everybody wants everything. So what makes that hard?
Saying no?
So saying no, definitely, that is not easy. I've always maintained that whoever said or created the catchphrase, just say no, that person should get into a room with whoever said, don't take no for an answer. And they must sort it out. And when they're ready, they must come out and tell us how we should behave. Because that's how we are raised. You know, just say no to drugs, children. And then the very next day, your parents send you somewhere to go do something, and you come back and they said, well, they're not going to do it. Don't take no for an answer. Go back. So we need to figure this out. So on a kind of similar vein, but I'd just like to test the room a bit. Have any of you heard or noticed recently that some of the Agile documentation is changing into ordering as opposed to prioritization? I see a few nods. Can anyone guess why? I would like to venture. Why do some of the Agile community now talk about let's order our work, we place it in order, as opposed to let's prioritize it?
You get all highs and then a couple mediums and then too low versus a stack rank order.
Pardon me? Just
You get, if you go to a class, say prioritize, they'll often give you 90% highs, 5% mediums, and 2% low, versus asking them for a stack rank order.
okay. And how do you feel about it?
You may have multiple people providing these priorities as well. And maybe multiple people have high priority items for themselves. But if you order them, then you can clearly define what's the important one.
So in theory, everything you're doing should be important, but if you have nothing but important things to do, and you said, give me priority, it doesn't tell you which one should be done first. Do it in order, you do it in order with the assumption that everything you do is actually important. But this is also the order that you should do it.
Now these answers are right. It's exactly right. When I decided on the topic, I wondered, which way should I go with this? And then I decided, no. It's prioritization. For me, it's prioritization. Talking about ordering is a cop-out. There's some really, really difficult conversation that you're avoiding because you talk about ordering. oh, we've got 2 number 1 priorities, so let's order them. Well, how about let's have that conversation about which one should be on top, which is the real priority. But when you've got multiple people, now things get tricky. So if you look at the first page, my success criteria for myself in this session is if you can walk out of here with a few techniques that you can take with you to have these conversations, I'm happy. If you want more out of it, then you need to hammer me with questions. I'll leave enough time with questions at the end. So that to me is the takeaway from this. Some practical prioritization techniques. We are not going to cover it all, but if you look at the first one, it's my attempt at a mind map of prioritization techniques. These are well documented. I'm going to show you my favorite ones, but they're well documented. You can go read up about them. You can ask me. I'll put my contact details. You can email me. You can ask me. You can start a conversation. Ask your colleagues. What I want you to realize, though, is this stuff is not easy. It is really, really hard, which means you've got to invest time in it. You can't just think that you're going to get a hang of prioritization by being in close proximity to where the conversations are. You're going to have to go and sit and think about it, do some research, talk to people. You've taken a good step, you've come to a conference. Yeah. So get input and actually digest it, and then the big thing of all big things, decide how you're going to behave differently when you get back to the office. With each session at this conference, that should be your aim. And I'll ask you at the end. So the ones that we're going to look at, my favorite ones, are Currencies, in the top left, some of David Anderson's work, top right, Opportunity Cost of Delay, second from the top, and we might get a bit further than that, but let's just try and get that far. Those are my favorite ones, and they've served me well in dealing with many companies. They're serving me well where I'm right now. So let's dive in. On the next page, you'll see currencies of value. When you're having prioritization conversations, you have to remember that you are stacking things in value order. In Agile, we constantly talk about business value. Teams should deliver business value. What is not often said is that term value has got many, many currencies associated with it. Money is just one currency. It's just one of them. There are many more. I've listed some. What I'd like you to do, because I've now given you a baked cake, which means it's very easy to ignore, at your tables, I'd like you to spend about 5 minutes and choose 3 or 4 of your favorite ones, the ones that you feel you can wrap your brain around, wrap your arms around. So what does that mean? It means you must be able to measure, you must be able to quantify it in some way, whatever way that is. So remember, these are currencies of value. Spend about 5 minutes, and then I'm going to go around. I won't have time to ask all the tables, but I'll definitely poll a few tables for what kind of conversations came out. Go. small, you're welcome to join another table if you need a bit of time.
That explains. So of course then money becomes a real factor of currency.
Here.
If we don't have the ability it's almost like, okay, I'm being pulled to a no-brainer saying that we have to optimize for money if I'm understanding this exercise correctly.
You could look at maybe the features that the developer is asking for is to construction vehicles faster.
Right.
There's a value to building. So that's something that needs to be
Okay, so
Another easy one is customer base. You could argue Facebook, for example. They just want to grow their customer base and not worry about making money or whatever else. So,
and when I was at
So maybe we should take up.
some of these things actually can't be measured. You can't measure. Paul, that's
last night I was at
It's cheap. It's cheap. Money to time to market, or time to customer retention.
she did. 5 minutes later, they came would you like to try lots of that?
yeah,
They did
yeah.
that
Previews will give you good.
Right.
But how do you measure it though?
Well, you know the confidence.
Oh, okay. So in that point of view, okay.
Yeah,
so there's
If
an
you give a
exchange
freebie,
rate.
right.
You exchange it to your money.
That's right. So I mean, you know what the cost is. There's no way it's
The only people who respond to customer satisfaction surveys are people that are really high or low. You actually don't get your average users, they just don't care enough to respond.
We are in-house, a lot of OT developers are used in-house, so this is good. We're sort of way ahead. Very well.
innovation.
I'm always partial.
I know.
Wondering about it. By
No, but see,
Okay, right.
yeah, there's different ideas.
Let's hear from a couple of tables. Who had an interesting conversation that they'd like to share?
One of the first things that we figured out was it's context specific. So then afterwards we not figured out shit. But with context specific driving a lot of the decisions.
So it's context specific, yeah.
Conversation that we had is, I went to and thinking, okay, a no-brainer thing here is money because we all want to get money, but that you might have more. Facebook was brought for an example. You might want to grow your customer base because then it's going to translate to those other factors.
Exactly. Another one? So what you need to pay attention to specifically is when last have you had this conversation with your product owners or your product managers or your senior executives or your middle management or even your team? When last have you quantified in real terms, how you define value. If you go to your team and you ask them, so what do we value? When we say we've got a backlog that's ordered in business value, would they even know what value, what currency you're talking about in terms of value? Step one, have that conversation. Define it. You'll be amazed how teams start to behave when they actually know why they're building something. And you don't score any credit for the money one. That's the easy. The others are much harder. At that table I heard innovation mentioned a few times. And I saw it ticked off on a few of the pages. So that's a big buzz at the moment. Everybody wants it. How do you get it? How do you even measure it? Now, for every organization, this list is going to be different. Sometimes, for every business unit in an organization, the list is going to be different. Sometimes, for every project within a business unit, within an organization, this list is going to be different. Make sure that the team, the product manager, or the product owner, whatever you'd like to call that role, make sure that they know what currencies are you dealing with. If it's money, it's money. If it's something else, you must know what it is. So, for your project, now remember, the intention of this is to give you steps that you can go through so that your life becomes just a little bit easier, hopefully. So for your project, you're first going to take this list and you're going to choose a couple, but you can't have them all. That's just going to be confusing. So choose a couple, 3 or 4, good number. And you're going to choose, okay, so these are the ones that we're going to have conversations about when we try and get our backlog in order. And then you're going to go one step further and choose a primary currency. So in this very leftmost column, you're going to say, this is our #1 currency. In the case of Twitter and Facebook, it might be growing a customer base. Money is simply not important right now. It is important, we need to eat, live, and do all those things, but it's not as important as the customer. That is our primary driver. In a business unit that's maybe responsible for disruptive development, so not a linear growth in sales, but a stepwise growth in sales, so you want to break into a new market, there's something else is going to be a primary driver. Make sure you know what it is and make sure you've communicated that information. Then a tricky one. You need to try, and this is trying, it's not easy, you need to try and put them in relation to one another. Now this is going to make you feel uncomfortable because it's not easy. You're going to hear me say that many, many times. For example, 2 business units. Insurance company, this is a real example by the way. Insurance company, 90% of their business comes from outbound marketing. So these are those annoying phone calls you get saying, are you interested in our insurance policies? 90% of their business. 10% of their business is responsible for mobile-based insurance policies. Specifically, extremely short-term mobile-based policies. This is, I've got life insurance, but we're going on a trip up the coast. I want to increase my life insurance just for the weekend. It's a high-risk period in my life. Novel concept. It's such a small part of the business that if you talk just plain money, that small part of the business will never, ever, ever, ever get anything on the backlog. So they had to try and understand, how does this desire to break into a new market, how does that relate to earning money from our primary business, the 90%? So there's an exchange rate. It's just like foreign exchange. So you can start to have a conversation, and it's all about the conversation. You can start to say things like, okay, so actually, every sale in this really revolutionary concept of insurance, so it's almost a pay-as-you-go type insurance. Every sale there is worth 20 or 30 sales in our business as usual. Because the barrier to entry is so much higher. So there's some relationship between those currencies. Once you've done that, now you can go back to your trusty backlog. And you can say, right, let's have a conversation about each of the items in the backlog. And it is about the conversation. So, first of all, when we look at an item, which currency does this item speak to? We've now got a short list of currencies. So which item will this, or which currency will this item help us to get to? Identify. Once you've identified, you can say, is this our primary currency, or is it one of the secondary currencies? And if it is one of the secondary currencies, how does it weigh up? Should we move it up, or should we move it down? Because remember, you can't have it all. Not going to be able to do it all. So something's going to give. You better make sure that what gives is at the bottom of the list. What is going to make this conversation difficult, if not impossible?
We all work at different
companies. Fair enough. But imagine in your own company. So you go back to your company and you say, well, I don't completely buy into this, but hey, let's try it. And you start this conversation. What is going to make it really, really difficult?
Conflicting values.
Sorry?
Conflicting values.
Conflicting values, definitely.
Uncertain values. I mean, you take a term like quality. What does that break down to? And then it becomes maybe hard to define that.
So uncertainty around each of one of the items? Yep.
The valuation might be subjective.
Sorry?
The valuation might be subjective. What I think should be a certain value per feature, you might disagree and think it's not as important. It doesn't hold as much value for you.
Yep. So subjective value, existing incentives. Good. Existing incentives. So if you're incentivized to deliver a product because that's what you're incentivized on, even though the product means nothing for the business, now it becomes a bit difficult. What can help? So we've listed a whole bunch of things that can be really, really hard, or what can make this difficult. What can help?
Building a consensus around values?
Definitely. Absolutely. Building a consensus around value. And what is the first step, or what is one first step that you can think of to take towards building consensus? conversation? Absolutely. A binding vision. That's the key. If you don't know where you're headed as an organization, if you don't know what you're trying to accomplish, I'm not talking about this short, I'm not talking about this release or this quarter. I'm talking about what is this organization about? Where are you headed? What are you trying to accomplish? If you don't have that, these conversations become really, really difficult. If you have that, the conversations are much easier. So, steps so far. You might not be able to do it immediately, but at least take a first stab at where are you headed? What are you trying to accomplish? What is your vision? Make a list of currencies that work towards that vision and that you can measure. Identify your primary currency, have a conversation around that. Identify the exchange rates between these currencies, have a conversation around that. And now you're just a little bit better off in putting your backlog together.
Isn't the primary currency always money?
So take Twitter for example. Have they made a cent? I don't know. I don't think so. I think they recently sold for a couple of 100,000 of your licenses to access to their database. Other than that, they haven't made money. Yet, they're a very real entity.
Just as an example on that, I was with Amazon.com back in the early days, and they weren't running a profit, but they were exchanging that currency into developing their brand into what it is today. They spent a lot of currency on that.
Exactly. So to help you, let me tell you a bit of a personal story, and that'll give you an idea of where this is headed. If you view each of these currencies as a bank account, so just like foreign exchange, you've got a whole series of bank accounts, each filled with these currencies. And each bank account has got different levels of currencies in them. So personally, I really enjoy what I do, which means I tend to work long hours. Fortunately, my wife also enjoys what she does, so she also works long hours. Our agreement is after hours we'll work together as much as possible, but we're still working. I do have a much higher tolerance for spending lots and lots of time working than what my wife does. So I've got my wife is okay with me working bank account. And it's at a certain level. If I dive into this bank account and I just keep on making withdrawals, this level drops and drops and drops. And then the smiles become less. And then grumpiness starts. And it's not unreasonable. I'm withdrawing currency. I'm burning all the cash I've got. I've learned for many years of being married that don't let it go to zero. It's already too late. So at some stage, I need to take a pause, look at my bank statement and see, hang on a second, I've been burning through this currency. I need to replenish it. It's got nothing to do with money. And it works wonders. To know where all these currencies are at and know which levels you're at, where you've withdrawn too much, so where you're overdrawn, where you've got surplus. If you know that in a business environment, it makes dealing with conflicting priorities much, much, much easier. If you're going to neglect one currency that you've identified as important by not paying into that bank account, it's going to start. You're going to end up in trouble. People hate you. Don't entertain. Does it make sense? Any questions, Sophie?
I followed you up to the point where it got low and you know what? So how do you, I don't understand the relationship between
With
that
my wife or with So in your work situation, you're replenishing the bank account by delivering a feature with that currency. For example, let's say this item delivers brand value. It might do nothing for your bottom line. Zip. But it delivers brand value. It's okay that it's there. But if you keep on moving it down or looking at it differently, if you keep on putting other stuff above it and you never get around to it, your brand is going to go out the door and eventually your business with it. If you educate everybody in your organization along this line of thinking, it makes conversations easier, because then you can tell people, we have delivered 3 features in a row for you. We need to take a pause and take care of this part of the business, and then we'll come back to delivering features. Because you speak to a different currency. We need to take care of this currency as well. And when you talk to them in this way, and you can even use the metaphor, then you can start to extend credit and make withdrawals. You keep track of it. So I'm a bit twisted in this sense. I actually keep track of bank records. So when we deliver a feature, I keep close track of what have we just delivered, what have we accomplished, so that if I need to move things around, that I can go to that business unit and say, I need you to give me a bit of a break here. Look what we've delivered over the last 2 months, but we need to deliver this. An interesting one. So, an hour is not enough to go through all of this, obviously, but I really encourage you to look at this list and think about it. What does it really mean? So an interesting one for me, reputation. Chief executive trying to close a deal, and in order to close the deal, he or she has to agree to some insanely stupid little feature. If you're a CEO and people's salaries are balancing on it, trust me, you're going to make that deal. You're going to say, yes, we'll deliver that. Unfortunately, the message that reaches the team is, deliver this feature. Oh, we've got to do this feature. The team's not stupid. They look at it and go, what? No one's going to use this. This is insane. What, this is going to come around once a year and you want us to deliver this now? This is ridiculous. And because they don't see the currency behind it, their motivation is zip. Drag their feet, rather work on other stuff, quality is going to be shocking. However, if you can contextualize it, that this item actually represents the reputation of our CEO in a business negotiation. Now we're not delivering a useless feature that's never going to be used. We're actually saving someone's reputation. Completely different conversation.
Question?
Yeah.
I don't see technical debt in your list. Would that belong to this as well?
That's why there's space at the bottom so that you can fill it in.
Okay.
Now, I'm actually not being facetious. My list keeps on growing. Every time I talk to people, they add. So add your own. So by all means, if you've, remember, technical debt is actually the father of this metaphor. So there's a big difference between spaghetti code and just bad craftsmanship and technical debt. Technical debt is a deliberate withdrawal from a bank account. I'm going to deliberately cut a corner to buy something else. It's a deliberate action. It's not a poor craftsmanship. You know, oh, I didn't know better. It's not that. It's a deliberate action. We know better, but we're still going to do this in the interest of whatever. Now it starts to accrue interest. If you don't pay that back, you're going to be in trouble. Technical debt. So yes, it's a bank. It's a currency. Now what we've got is some sort of a backlog. A little bit better, a little bit easier, still not quite good. Because there are things that you simply cannot justify doing. It's really difficult. You've got to do them, but to find a currency that fits in with them, really, really hard. So, types of work to the rescue on the next page. And again, there's space at the bottom so you can add your own types of work. An example that's not on there, what might be is, let's say there's a report that you've got to run twice a week. And at the moment, it's impossible or difficult to automate it. That is a type of work. Maybe where you are right now, you can't even quantify the value of it. It will take you weeks to figure that out. Eventually you should, otherwise you should stop doing it. But right now, the battle that you want to fight today is not finding that out. The battle that you want to fight today is how much of this stuff should we be doing? So, this is now another technique. So it's not, remember, we're on to the next technique. So currencies is one. We're now under the David Anderson type of work leg in your mind map. So let's make it personal. You're moving house. So you've bought a new house or you rented a new place. You need to move at the end of the month. And in order to make the move, there are a whole bunch of boxes that you need to pack. I mean, 50 boxes. That is one type of work. If you say that's the most important thing, we're only going to do that, oh, that's not going to work so well. You still need to eat. You still, hopefully, need to take a bath, personal hygiene. You still need to take the kids to school. And of course you need to pack. So pack at the top of the list, but there are all these other things that you also need to do. So, if currencies didn't help, now you can try this. So if you look at types of work, new development, customer support, maintenance, engineering, research. These are types of work that you need to do. And the way you use this sheet is you choose one, again as the starting point, just to put a stick in the sand, and then you express the others as a percentage of that one, or as a ratio of that one. And what you're basically saying is, if I draw a line in my backlog, you can choose where the line is, then I want 2 engineering items for every customer support item and one brand item and a new dev. So our ratio that we're working to is right at the moment we need to accelerate our engineering effort. We cannot ignore customer support at the cost of engineering effort. We still need to do a bit of that. A bit of brand and a bit of new development. And this pattern can repeat itself. So what you're accomplishing, and in the Kanban communities this is incredibly popular, because if you've got a Kanban board and you accept work into the in queue in this order, in this ratio, then you're not too disruptive across the organization. So you'll be surprised how well people respond to, look, we can only do one customer support item per whatever. You can choose the period. But you'll definitely get your one. So what you're doing now is you're prioritizing batches at a time. And you're guaranteeing the business of a batch mix. A few things to watch out for. If you've got a depth of 10 types of work and you're doing one of each, maybe it's time to focus. So remember, one of the topics of today is focus. Maybe you spread too thin. Maybe you need to narrow that down. But when you have to deal with really, really tough conversations, and so again, personal experience, a company that they developed set-top box technology. They were just new product after new product after new product after new product. But their customer support department was being starved of attention by developers. When I got involved, they had a depth of almost 800 outstanding items, customer support items. It's just insane. And they hadn't seen one in months. The dev team just ignores them. And they're crying. On the one side, they're making new sales. On the other side, they're hemorrhaging customers because customers are just saying, look, you're never helping me, so why should I hang around? The first thing we did, the currencies conversation was way too difficult. Way too many competing priorities. First thing we did was, okay, every sprint we will do one item. Just one. If you give us an item that takes more than 5 days, then you lose 2 sprints. We're not going to take one in the next sprint. But you will get one. Just one. They just immediately, oh, thank you, at least one. The depth of 800 items, and they only get to choose one, but they were grateful for it. Once we could give that to them reliably, like clockwork, every sprint they got one, you could see how they start to work their backlog. They made sure that whatever that one is, it was gold. Later on we made it 2, later on we made it 3, but 4 months later, 0, depleted, fixed the whole list. It happens very quickly. Okay, so, I know it's just an hour, so I'm giving you a lot to digest. My details are up there. If you've got any questions, contact me, please. Along the same lines, and I'm going to go through this really quickly, classes of service, again, it's well documented. Once you've got this backlog, invariably someone asks, but what if a crisis comes along? You know, so we've got this beautiful backlog, and if we use the CEO example, an item comes from left field saying this has to be done now. So we would call that an expedite item. Let's drop everything and do this, and do it now. They are much harder to deal with. So you can look at these classes of service. Just to give you something to hold on to, the best example of class of service is first class on a plane. You're basically paying to jump the queue. So it's, you're here now, how much are you willing to pay to be there? That defines your class of service. The simplest class of service, which is called standard class of service, is first in, first out. So you just rank them in date order. And then there are a couple of others. I encourage you to go read about them. Again, the secret is to get the ratio right. So if you're going to have something like an expedite item, remember it's about the conversation. Limit the organization to one expedite item per month. We'll do it. When you bring something, we'll drop everything and do it. But you can only do that once a month. Otherwise, we're hurting the rest of the business too much. So choose carefully. If you burn it on the first day in the month, that's it. So choose. And you find that the conversations you're having get easier. Because you're not saying no. You're not saying, I'm not going to do it. You're saying, I'm just going to do one. So choose it carefully. Again, on a personal note, works wonders at home. My wife has got an absolute awesome memory. So whatever she asks me to do, she remembers. And she can recite that list at will. So I know I need to do XXX, but whenever the list gets raised, I hear all of them. So, whoa, that was just too much. So introduce the class of service. So when you mention something, it goes to the bottom of the list. First in, first out. That gives me some structure. I'm a structured individual. I need some structure. So whatever is at the top of the list, because it's the oldest in the list, I will do it. I'll just take it in our fridge. If you see our fridge, there are stickies. It's the honey-do list. If a new one comes along, it goes at the bottom. Now I've got structure. I work top down. She's got expedite items. So she can go, hang on a second, I want you to do this weekend. I'll gladly do it. But that's the one for the month. The rest, I need a bit of structure to work top down. Doesn't mean I'm not going to do other stuff, it just means I've got to top down. Works wonders. Absolutely magnificent. And I get more done. The last one that I quickly want to touch on is quite a difficult one, but it is incredibly powerful. And it's opportunity cost of delay. Now remember, one of the things that you mentioned that makes prioritization difficult, competing priorities, another thing you mentioned, saying no. So instead of saying no, we like saying yes at a cost. So how you can use opportunity cost of delay to have this conversation so that you can get to a sensible backlog is you ask the individuals involved, draw me the diagram that represents opportunity cost of not doing this item, of delaying this item. So let's use an easy example, because again, on this axis, you can put any of the currencies we discussed, but let's use the easy one and go for money. And the horizontal axis is time. The hotel industry, a place like this, classic example. So let's say they need their IT department to run a special for Christmas. So if they deliver it too early, if they deliver it in June already, that's not going to help them. The special is only going to run from the 1st of November. So the opportunity cost of not doing this work is 0. Doing it too early, you're not. If by not doing it, you're not losing it. However, as you hit 1st of November when the special kicks in, if you're not done with the work, now you're starting to lose money. It will peak at some stage. After about the 20th of December, you know what? If you haven't done it by now, don't bother. You've missed the window. It's gone. Christmas is over. Then it's 0 again. You've lost the money you're going to lose. So if you add up this area under the curve, you get the total amount that you've lost. And that's the opportunity cost of delayed curve. Here's the trick. When you do this, please, I beg you, please, don't put a scale here. Don't start getting all scientific about numbers. Time will come for that. When you start, that's not the time for it. Literally, take a piece of paper like this, that's why I gave it to you, and ask everybody that's in a conversation about prioritization to draw what they see this curve look like and have a conversation around that. So if this is one of the curves, and that's another one, on this one, every day that passes, you're burning cash, you're losing. The opportunity cost of delaying this item is quite significant. Maybe you should get some of this out of the way. Obviously, you need to be conscientious of your lead time. So if you know what your lead time is, then you can go, we can work on this now. So this is a conversation with your stakeholders because you're trying to prioritize work. We can work on this now, but if we don't start on this project then, we're not going to make this. Then we're going to start burning cash there. So we can give you this time frame. We can load your backlog, the top of the backlog with your work. But come that date, so now your stakeholder of this product has got to be really careful about what they put onto the backlog. And you can prioritize. So why I gave you a number of graphs, I'd like you to, whenever you've got a moment, draw the graphs that you can think of. And keep it in your pocket so that when you have conversations, you can talk to people, talk to your stakeholders relative to the graph. So another interesting one is 0, 0, 0, 0. Typical legal situation. So another example, I did some consulting work for online trading house, and there was a legislation change that comes into effect on a specific date. If you're compliant, you can still do business the next day. If you're not compliant, you close the doors. You're not allowed to trade until you're compliant. It's one of these. It's infinite cost of delay. Close the doors. With very little time left, now remember, there's a long break after this. There's a discussion section after that, so I'll be available for both. Any questions?
Can I, the conversations that you're talking, so you've raised a number of different Do you have those with all of the stakeholders around so that they challenge maybe some of these OCD charts and so on, or is it an individual conversation?
Wow. I would say you need the right people in the room. And we can go into it in more detail, but just for those that might be leaving, if you're looking for a book that would really help you identify the right people in the room, who should that be? Look for a book called Don't Just Do Something, Stand There. It's the opposite of what you would expect. So don't just do something, stand there. Awesome book. And it's got an entire chapter, in fact, I think an entire section of the book, dedicated to what is the right people in the room. What is the right mix of skill to be able to make the decision, of knowledge and experience to be able to make the decision, of influence. So it doesn't help you've got very clever people in the room if they don't have the authority to make a decision of moving something up and down. Don't bother, you're not going to get very far. So that would be my take on
that. What I'm going to do now is I want to first of all thank Marius. We have for all of the speakers here, this is an original print from a local artist. And in particular, this is all about curiosity. There's some information in there. So I'd like to say thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it. As Marius mentioned, there is the opportunity to have more open questions and chats. I'm sure Marius